Deep-sea cameras catch rare footage of a legendary creature. The ocean has a way of surprising even the most knowledgeable scientists. Of course, it covers 71% of the planet's surface, and we've barely explored any of it, so there's still very real shock when they come across a never-before-seen creature from the depths. One of these passionate researchers is Nathan Robinson, who was on the research vessel Point Sur in the Gulf of Mexico when he made a startling discovery. He was responsible for handling the video feed from the deep-sea camera, and while he managed it, he found something big, literally. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, was made up of 12 oceanographers and marine biologists, including Edith Witter, Heather Judkins, Tamara Frank, and Sonke Johnson. Being the leading experts in their field, they all thought they knew what they were getting into. Nathan and the rest of the crew were interested in studying the sea creatures who lived so deep that sunlight doesn't even reach them. Without light, these curious creatures have to adapt in order to navigate their dark world. The experts wanted to see how they could find their way without a light source. The scientists used Medusa, a state-of-the-art deep-sea camera, to record the various animals they encountered. Medusa's inventor, Edith Witter, had been developing the camera since 2012. Instead of using white lights, Edith installed red ones. Most deep-sea animals can't perceive this color, meaning they won't flee from it. Edith also added another cool feature, an LED lure that looks and acts like a jellyfish. When jellyfish are attacked, they glow in a unique way, getting the attention of large predators in the area. Edith hoped this could bring in some exciting predatory creatures. And in the final few days of the project, it looked like Edith's invention was put to good use. Medusa filmed something spectacular on June 19, 2019. The recording began as innocuous until the tentacles slid into view. They whipped toward Medusa and wriggled on screen for a few seconds before charging back into the cover of the dark ocean. As Witter and Johnson wrote on NOAA's website, we knew immediately that it was a squid. They couldn't tell how long the animal was, but estimate it was 12 feet and only still a juvenile. Quickly, the team conferred with squid expert Michael Beccioni at the NOAA National Marine Fisheries Services, but they soon had a crisis on their hands. While they were preparing to talk to Michael, a bolt of lightning hit Point Sur, which is adjacent to Medusa's location. The crew was terrified that their video footage may have been damaged by the storm. Luckily, the camera was fine, and they sent the video file to Michael. After carefully reviewing the footage, he assured the researchers that he could almost 100% confirm that they had witnessed a giant squid. The scientists had even more cause for celebration because this was the first time a giant squid has ever been spotted in American waters. Because of its rarity and size, the squid itself had taken on an elusive, almost mythical quality. A living giant squid wasn't seen until 2004, when Japanese zoologist Tsunemi Kubodera photographed one. Before then, the only time scientists spotted a giant squid was when their bodies washed onto the beach, probably scaring more than a few beachgoers. This is another reason why this discovery was so exciting. Before now, scientists wondered if the cephalopods were only native to Asian waters. Though the squid that was spotted was only a juvenile, adults may still be lurking in the depths. The Twilight Zone project team was able to find their squid 100 miles off the coast of New Orleans after only deploying the Medusa camera on 5 different trips. Other submersibles had attempted to find squids in the past, but hadn't been successful. With the Medusa's stealthy red lights, their team was able to stand out from the rest. It allowed the crew to see what no other living person had glimpsed, a giant squid just off the coast of the United States. In a joint post, Edith and Nathan talked about how special it was to uncover such a magnificent creature and wanted to make sure people understood that these animals may be huge, but aren't monsters. Most importantly, we did not find a monster. The giant squid is large and certainly unusual from our human perspective, but if the video shows anything of the animal's character, it shows an animal surprised by its mistake, wrote Nathan and Edith. When the squid saw Medusa, it thought the camera was a potential snack and tried to snatch it into the deep. Of course, the creature quickly realized it wasn't food and swam away. The simple mistake helps bring some character to a mysterious animal. We like to feel that science and exploration has brought about this change, making the world less scary and more wondrous with each new thing we learned, wrote Nathan and Edith. Their discovery also shed some light on centuries-old sea monster myths. These researchers had the luxury of 21st century technology. Unlike the golden age of sail, those sailors endured a harder life than anyone nowadays can even imagine. In addition to the hours of hard labor and countless meals of stale rations, sailors also faced a great deal of danger at sea. Drowning and privateer attacks were always possible. Some of the most dangerous threats lurked beneath the waves. For as long as people were sailing the seven seas, rumors spread of monsters lurking in the briny deep. Ships that never returned to port were said to have fallen afoul of some terrible beast. One of those was the Kraken, with sailors recording sightings of the creature as early as the 13th century. Those encounters, however, were with something quite different than the pop culture creature we currently know. Krakens of that time looked like a variety of sea creatures, ranging from spiny fish to giant lobsters with claws, capable of crushing a ship. All the sightings shared one common trait. Every Kraken was reportedly massive and terrifying. Sailors were pretty tough, so anything they found scary had to be horrible. And naturally, as time passed, descriptions of the Kraken started to change. Before long, people were using the word Kraken to refer to any sea creature that was strange and unrecognizable. But in 1735, one scientist tried to clarify things once and for all. Swedish scientist Carl Linnaeus formalized by binomial nomenclature, the method used to properly name living organisms. He decided that a Kraken, whatever it was, needed to be officially classified and deemed it Microcosmus marinus. But in 1830, there was another leap forward. Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote a poem about a sea monster titled The Kraken. Not only did his work propel the beast into pop culture, but it inspired another change. Previously, a Kraken could be any monstrous sea creature. Tennyson's poem, however, capitalized the beast's name. The Kraken was now one specific monster with a defined identity. That identity quickly began to spread. In a matter of years, the Kraken became a pop culture fixture. It was discussed in Herman Melville's classic Moby Dick and appeared, albeit under a different name, in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Scientists noticed the beast's popularity and redoubled their efforts to identify the Kraken. In 1872, the Royal Society of Biology published a paper about observations of large aquatic animals that included one strange finding. The paper asserted that the Kraken was simply an enormous exaggeration of the gigantic species of cuttlefish known or believed to exist in the Indian Ocean. The mystery had been solved once and for all, or had it? Well, the confirmation meshed with the general advancement of society. After the Age of Enlightenment, researchers attempted to explain the natural world through rational observation. While sailors simply called something a Kraken, scientists now wanted to study it. In technical literature, giant squids, or what people likely thought were krakens, were first discussed in the late 1800s. Scientists have only recently started capturing live images of the creatures, however, showing the slow but gradual advancement of knowledge. But there's a reason mythological creatures like the Kraken are still prevalent in pop culture. Myths and legends, no matter how silly they seem to modern audiences, serve a valuable purpose in society. Myths generally begin as a way to explain a natural phenomenon. Strange squid became the Kraken. Unusual-looking manatees had to be mermaids. But that's where science comes in to move things forward. Myths provided the foundation for scientists and researchers to build upon. In the case of the Kraken, for example, they knew something strange was out there. Researchers just had to define what it was. The legacy still continues to this day as scientists try to track down a giant living squid. While new videos continue to be captured, the beast that theoretically inspired the Kraken is still a mystery to us. Guys like Benjamin Radford are determined to find out more about beasts like Krakens. He's made a career out of tracking down the deadliest creatures in the world, assuming that they exist at all. As a paranormal investigator and expert on urban legends, he utilizes a scientific approach to determine whether or not there really are things that go bump in the night. Still, he's far different from your average TV ghost hunter. Benjamin is game to scope out a haunted house, though he's not the type of investigator who will claim to find ectoplasm in every corner. He's actually skeptical that these kinds of spirits exist. Still, he was not as certain about mythical beasts. Throughout history, nearly every culture asserted the existence of some monster plaguing their people. Benjamin has at least looked into each one, but he decided to chase the beast that was basically in his own backyard. He was after the chupacabra, the most infamous monstrosity of the Caribbean and Central America. Its reputation has become so feared that even people in New England and Europe have claimed to see it. There's no doubt why it's so memorable. Reports disagreed about whether the demon looked more like a wolf or a reptile, but its modus operandi stayed consistent. Chupacabra literally translated to goat sucker. Tales of the chupacabra spread as shepherds found their flocks mysteriously drained of blood overnight. This legend stayed with Benjamin since the first time he heard it as a child in New Mexico. Could there be some truth behind this fearsome predator? To get the ball rolling, the investigator contacted alleged chupacabra witnesses. Most encounters, like a notable 1995 sighting in Puerto Rico, unfortunately didn't involve any physical evidence. Benjamin knew that relying on someone's memory was a dicey prospect. Fear often distorted the recollections of even the most trustworthy observer. He made an interesting connection when digging into that 1995 claim. The onlooker provided an extraterrestrial description that rung a bell in Benjamin's mind. It was a dead ringer for Syl, the alien antagonist from Species, a horror movie that debuted the same year. It seemed that when in panic mode, the human mind filled in gaps with a familiar image. Benjamin therefore doubted that a real chupacabra would resemble a movie villain, but the thought of a more canine monster intrigued him. For this version of the chupacabra, the beast looked like a wolf with enlarged eyes, claws, and teeth. In biological terms, this theory held more water. Could it be that the monster was a rare mutant? This possibility had Benjamin hopping all over the Americas, visiting purported chupacabra sites between Texas and Nicaragua. There was definitely proof that something vicious was attacking local livestock, and that was only the tip of the iceberg. In a handful of cases, unsuspecting townspeople happened upon the remains of a chupacabra. This body looked like no other animal the witnesses had seen before, so hideously deformed and strangely patterned. Benjamin felt his heart race when he heard the news. When veterinarians examined the species, however, the results were less than thrilling. They determined most of them to be coyotes, raccoons, or Mexican hairless dogs. Still, there was a monster involved in each of these findings. Parasitic mites really did make these ordinary animals look like abominations. They caused mange, a disease that removes hair and forms scaly patches all over the skin. Still, a few believers wouldn't buy this explanation. Many had seen herds of goats decimated firsthand, with barely a single drop of blood left in their bodies. Benjamin's zoological research chalked this up to ordinary coyotes. While hunting, they often punctured blood vessels in the neck of their prey, which quickly bled out. Though disappointed not to find an actual chupacabra, Benjamin pieced together how this legend came about. For one thing, the beast bore a striking similarity to the vampires. Besides the supernatural blood drinking, both stories explained misfortunes suffered by isolated societies. Even in our ultra-connected world, these tales persist due to entertainment and conspiracy culture. However unlikely, it may be that creatures like Bigfoot and the chupacabra actually exist. The ideas behind them are too alluring for many believers to give up. Without a shred of proof for the real chupacabra, Benjamin asserted that the goatsucker was nothing more than a fable. That was par for the course for this professional skeptic. Still, many others won't back down from their belief of otherworldly phenomena. The Scottish Highlands are known for lush green scenery and centuries-old castles, but what really attracts tourists has nothing to do with nature and architecture. Scotland's greatest mystery lies just beneath the surface of the vast Loch Ness. Loch Ness is over 700 feet of deep, dark water, and it's the rumored home of the mythical Loch Ness Monster. A geneticist and self-described monster hunter, Professor Neil Gemmell, was fascinated by the myth and believed he could be the one to get answers. But before answers could be found, Gemmell had to ask himself some key questions. How did Nessie come to be? What does it look like? What truly lives in Loch Ness's murky underwater world? Believe it or not, the existence of a larger than average underwater creature in Loch Ness was recorded all the way back in 500 AD. A man was swimming when he was apparently mauled and dragged underwater by a water beast. From then on, the sightings only increased. At the beginning of the 20th century, local interest in an underwater beast hit its peak. The tourism in the area was increasing, and in 1934, a vacationing man was looking out at the loch when he saw something odd, so he grabbed his camera. The ensuing picture, known as the surgeon's photograph, captured a blurry, long-necked creature peeking out of the water. Suddenly, Nessie's long neck and bumpy back was famous worldwide. This became the definitive Nessie sighting, but it also sparked years of controversy. The scientific community has always resisted the existence of the Loch Ness Monster due to a lack of evidence, and it wasn't long after the surgeon's photo was published that it was exposed as a hoax. Unfortunately, this was a huge blow to enthusiasts everywhere. You see, back when photographic evidence was really the only surefire way to provide evidence that something had happened, all believers had to go on were local tales and childish drawings. Thankfully, times have changed. Professor Neil Gemmell knew that even some myths should be investigated, so he decided to find out the truth once and for all. And since it's the 21st century, he was able to do a lot better than photographic evidence. Leading a team from New Zealand's University of Otago, Neil took water samples from 3 different depths of the lake. Each sample contained DNA that Neil hoped would shed some light on the murky mystery, DNA that was comprised of seemingly normal materials. Neil's team sent the DNA samples, which reportedly contained skin, scales, feather, fur, and fecal matter, to labs in Australia, New Zealand, Denmark, and France. Neil's investigation couldn't have come at a better time, as Nessie sightings have recently reached a record high. Sightings are now at a level that were being recorded in the 1990s, said Gary Campbell, recorder of the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register. The internet has meant that Loch has never been more watched, and from anywhere in the world. With so many people intent on uncovering the Loch's secrets themselves, the Scottish economy rakes in millions a year thanks to Nessie. In 2019 alone, there have already been 12 people claiming to have seen the Loch Ness Monster with their own eyes. One man, Richard Cobb, saw something large break through the surface of Loch Ness in late July 2019. I never believed in Nessie, but now I'm not so sure. What I saw was just weird, he said. There was something in there for sure. In June 2019, a boat skipper logged a large creature on its sonar close to one of Nessie's favorite lairs. It was a 25-foot-long object, definitely not your average fish. It was exceptionally big. I would like to think it was Nessie, he said. Hundreds of Nessie sightings have been debunked as otters, swans, and floating debris. Gemmell hopes that the results from his investigation will be undeniable, but he knows how staunchly some people believe in even the most outlandish of theories. Some people think that Nessie is really just an enormous catfish or eel, while others believe it to be a large Greenland shark. One of the more eccentric beliefs is that the monster is a slightly evolved plesiosaur that somehow avoided extinction. Fans of the mystery are craving answers. On Facebook, 18,000 people have signed up to storm Loch Ness in September 2019. They hope enough people in Loch Ness will get the creature to resurface so they can, as the group put it, find that big boy. But Gemmell hopes that his findings will answer any questions people have before any storming ensues. We've tested each one of the main monster hypotheses, and 3 of them we can probably say aren't right, and 1 of them might be, he said mysteriously. He described his findings as significant and a bit surprising, and expects to release them in September. We're delighted with the amount of interest the project has generated, he said. Monster or not, we're going to understand Loch Ness and the life in it in a new way. While Loch Ness Monster enthusiasts wait for the results of Gemmell's study, some are turning their attentions to Lake Van, the largest body of water in all of Turkey. It's also hiding a secret monster within its depths. Despite being situated over 5,000 feet above sea level, Lake Van never freezes. The lake's high salinity keeps the water flowing year-round, though this phenomenon has come at the price of Lake Van's biodiversity. Because of these high salt levels, only one type of fish, the pearl mullet, is known to live in the lake's brackish waters. However, according to local legend, these mackerel-sized fish aren't the only creatures lurking beneath the waves of Lake Van. For over a century, locals have reported sightings of a monster that calls Lake Van its home. Most of these claims have proven unfounded over the years, though in 1997, Unal Kozek managed to capture the creature on film. In the video, a large, almost squid-like monster emerges from the water before slowly disappearing beneath the waves. Yet, like similar sightings of legendary creatures, the legitimacy of Kozek's discovery continues to be a point of contention among scholars. Even so, the possible existence of such a creature hasn't deterred archaeologists from exploring the lake. Just recently, in fact, an expedition led divers to the very bottom of Lake Van, though what they found there was unlike anything they'd seen before. On the day in question, a group of researchers assembled by Van Uzinsu, Yale University, arrived at the lake shore to debunk another age-old myth that the lost city of Atlantis was actually somewhere beneath Lake Van. Believe it or not, this idea wasn't so far-fetched. The land surrounding Lake Van was once home to the Utarians, an ancient civilization that flourished in Turkey during the Iron Age some 3,000 years ago. Yet despite their centuries-long presence in the area, very few remnants from the days of these ancient people still remain. While conquest surely played a role in the disappearance of most Uritarian structures, some scholars believe the rising tides of Lake Van sunk these relics beneath the water. Locating these structures would be no easy task, however, so the team opted to bring in a little extra help. A veteran underwater photographer, Tasin Sailan, was pegged to lead the expedition's dive team in search of the lost Uritarian kingdom. With his years of diving experience, coupled with his extensive knowledge of Lake Van, Sailan was surely the team's best bet for uncovering this long-forgotten piece of history. But when it finally came time to take the plunge into the lake, even Sailan couldn't help but feel a little wary over the thought of the legend of the Lake Van monster. Sure, he'd dived here hundreds of times before, but would this be the day he finally came face to fin with the terrifying creature? The team seemed to echo their guide's fears, and as they drove deeper into the lake, it seemed increasingly difficult to shake this unnerving thought. After all, in a body of water as large and murky as this one, almost anything could be lurking just a few feet below. Once they'd reached the bottom of Lake Van, Sailan and his team quickly set to work combing the sand for any sign of Uritarian artifacts. Almost instantly, one of the divers spotted an enormous shadow that made everyone's blood run cold. Shrouded in a veil of deep blue, what the divers saw sat in total stillness, almost as if it was made of stone. The divers summoned their courage and swam toward the sight, but what they found wasn't a monster. It was a castle. The towering structure was in remarkable condition, its walls and foundation intact. It had certainly been down there for quite some time. But was this castle truly a relic from the long-forgotten Uritarian Empire? They needed to know more. As Sailan and his team continued exploring the ruins, one of the divers stumbled upon a revelatory etching on one of the walls, that of a lion. This all but confirmed the castle was Uritarian, as the civilization had used symbols such as these to identify themselves as a kingdom for centuries. After snapping photos of the structure, the divers returned to the surface to share their findings with the rest of the team. The researchers were thrilled at the discovery, though upon learning of the lion symbol, things quickly became complicated. Despite the Uritarians using this motif throughout their history, some of the scholars believe the lion symbol looked more medieval than ancient. If this was the case, then the castle would date back to the Middle Ages rather than the Iron Age. The structure itself also supported this theory, as the stones used to build it were a mix of both Uritarian and medieval. This led scholars to deduce the kingdoms of the Middle Ages likely repurposed materials from these ancient ruins to build their own fortresses. The archaeological community remains split over the true origin of the castle beneath Lake Van. In the meantime, historians turn their attention to a new discovery made in the US, one that might even be more extraordinary than the lost Uritarian kingdom. Beneath the calm waters of Cape Cod in Massachusetts, divers found a massive secret, one that lay hidden for hundreds of years. It would excite just about any historian they knew. It's the wreck of the Whydah, a massive ship built to hold 150 men and several hundred tons of cargo. It went missing off the coast of New England in 1717, and many assumed it was lost forever. However, explorer Barry Clifford discovered the wreck of the Whydah in 1984, and he has been digging up artifacts from the site ever since. His exploits make him one of the greatest treasure hunters of all time. Barry has long been on the hunt for a treasure that will make him a legend. He once believed he found the remnants of the Santa Maria from Christopher Columbus's original 1492 voyage, but tests later determined it was a different vessel. The Whydah, however, was a monumental find. It was the flagship of one of history's greatest pirates, Black Sam Bellamy. This captain was known as the Robin Hood of the seas, and for good reason. For one thing, Bellamy only targeted wealthy merchants and tried to use as little violence as possible. His crew members received equal pay and respect, even those who were Native Americans or former slaves. In fact, the Whydah was originally the property of slave traders until Bellamy seized it by force and freed the captives aboard. Most famously, Bellamy pulled off the biggest heist in pirate history. Historians estimated that he plundered the modern equivalent of $120 million throughout his career. These daring exploits made Bellamy one of the most talked about pirates of his time. He rose above his criminal origins to become a bona fide folk hero. Unfortunately, Bellamy didn't have much time to enjoy his success. A massive storm sank the Whydah, claiming untold amounts of treasure and most of the crew, including Bellamy himself. Centuries later, Clifford and his colleagues have unearthed the countless relics and treasures from the wreck, and they established the Whydah Pirate Museum to share Bellamy's story. Even though Clifford's team has been studying this site for decades, he still felt like they were only scratching the surface. Then, one diving mission in late 2016 changed everything. The explorers located a large chunk of debris from the Whydah that had many artifacts trapped inside of it. They hauled it up to dry land for a closer look. It presented a virtual treasure trove, with genuine coins and seafaring equipment jutting through the rough surface. But this motherlode contained one thing the scientists didn't expect to find: human bones. They came across a femur just a short distance away from what appeared to be Bellamy's pistol. Could it be the remains of the late great captain himself? Clifford knew they needed proof, so he recruited a team of forensic scientists. They extracted DNA from the bone and compared it to that of one of Bellamy's descendants in the United Kingdom. At last, the results came in, but it was not a match. This bone likely belonged to an anonymous crew member, but certainly not to Captain Bellamy. The elusive Black Sam slipped away from authorities once again. The bad news sunk Clifford's theory faster than the Whydah. Nevertheless, the bone gave researchers the chance to learn more about the typical sailor from that era. Clifford can still take pride in his ongoing excavation of the Whydah. After all, no other famous pirate ship has been studied so closely. Nobody can question his accomplishments or contributions to history. Besides, the mysteries of the Whydah are still out there in the briny deep, and Bellamy's final resting place may even surface someday. All it will take is the right person to find it.